It is the time of year where the teams at the bottom part of the standings start to look to next year, and with the college football bowl season well underway and the college football playoff happening this weekend, I thought a pretty good time to take a look and see who are some of the quarterbacks who could be coming in to save the day, whose days need to be saved, and where could some professional help be coming as well. So this is the look at the quarterback situation across the National Football League. Let's start with the quarterbacks who are going to be available. Using the ESPN draft rankings, here are the top 4 quarterbacks. These are the the quarterbacks that are in the top 50 on their draft board. And I should say, very, very quickly, that this is not about the teams that these rankings are not where these quarterbacks are going to go because teams can't help themselves. This is about where these guys rank talent-wise compared to their draft. And so the number 1 quarterback available, according to ESPN's big board, is Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback out of Colorado. Has an electric wide receiver with him who also plays corner, and has a lot of talents, but also hasn't had to play with a lot of structure. Now can't because he has basically this for an offensive line, but there are some questions about him. But the best version of this looks incredible and is franchise changing. And I think at worst, they were talking about it on the broadcast, at worst, this guy's a starter, I think, in the NFL. But I do think when you see the last couple of quarterbacks who have gone number 1, you get a little bit concerned about, oh no, yeah, he's a little bit off target sometimes, and a little bit off this, a little bit off that, but no, it's fine. He's got the tools. It'll be all good. You can certainly see some teams being a little bit hesitant with that. Second best quarterback available is Cam Ward out of the U from the University of Miami as the 15th overall player. Again, he was in a lot of firefights this year just based on how that defense played out in Miami, and so the numbers are going to look a little bit inflated because he just needed to do everything. But again, I think there is a starting quarterback there. And then you have to go all the way until what would be a projected 2nd round pick if we were just going by best player available. And it is Quinn Ewers, the quarterback out of Texas. Not even the best quarterback on his team at times, but he has the 34th ranking on the draft board. And then Jalen Milroe, quarterback out of Alabama. He is the number 49th player on the ESPN big board. So we are not talking about the quality of players that you had at the quarterback position last year coming out of the draft with Jaden Daniels and Drake May, and Caleb Williams and all of that. We are talking about starter. He'll start, but not necessarily your franchise quarterback, with the exception of maybe Shedeur if you get the best case scenario out of him. In terms of quarterbacks that'll be available in free agency, the belle of the ball is certainly going to be Sam Darnold. His contract is up after a career year with the Minnesota Vikings. Another one who is available is Russell Wilson. Both he and Justin Fields are available in free agency. And then she falls off a cliff pretty quick with Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Jacoby Brissett, and Jameis Winston as some of the other quarterbacks that are available. So this is a really difficult year if you are going to be a quarterback needy team. And when we look at the teams that are going to be quarterback needy, the situations are desperate in a couple of these, but I don't know, like this feels like a weird mix because on the one hand, like Cleveland is quarterback needy. They have, right now, negative $18 million in salary cap space. And we're going to assume that's not going to improve because if we're taking them as a quarterback needy team, that probably means they're cutting Deshaun Watson and his $172 million dead cap. Now, the talk right now is that they are not going to be doing that. I would be surprised if they don't, but again, we talked about it. One of the ways you do that is kind of the way Denver just did it, where Russell Wilson is gone. You cut him. It's a whole lot of dead cap, but you supplement it by bringing in a quarterback on their rookie deal. That quarterback turns out to be awesome, and all of a sudden you're a playoff team. That is the exact model that Cleveland is going to be looking to follow. I just don't know if they're going to be in a spot to draft one of the guys that could kind of help this offense out a little bit. Also, so these are the quarterback needy teams. Cleveland, the Giants, that one is so obvious that the Giants need a quarterback. The New York Jets, I have in here. We will see what happens with Aaron Rodgers. I would suggest even if he comes back, this is a team that needs a quarterback. The Tennessee Titans, again, that one is obvious. And the Vegas Raiders with $111 million in salary cap space. And so it feels like one of these teams, at least one of these teams, is going to miss out on something. Because right now, I would suggest you have 4 starting options at the quarterback spot available right now. With, in the draft, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, and in free agency, Sam Darnold and Russell Wilson. After that, I think you can make a very compelling case for Justin Fields to be a starting quarterback as well. But we have, if we cut out the Jets, then we have 4 starting options for 4 quarterback needy teams. And so maybe that works out. But then again, you are hoping for best case scenario and Sam Darnold doing it in a way that he's never done it before. Also, just becoming available because Minnesota right now has, going into this offseason, $78 million in salary cap space. So there is a very real chance that Darnold isn't even available for one of these teams. And then you are getting a couple of quarterbacks in the draft that just don't feel like they are ready to step in and change your franchise. Like with the Raiders, you have Brock Bowers that he is throwing to, and that's it. I guess maybe Jacoby Myers as well. On the Giants, you have Malik Neighbors in that offense, and that's it. And neither team can block worth a damn. So you're not putting these kids into the best situation right now. But then in free agency, if you want to go out and just get a placeholder the way the Raiders did, like, let's take a dart throw on Trey Lance, shall we? It doesn't feel overly inspired. So when we look at the teams that are kind of on the fence right now, I have 3. Minnesota is one because if they lose out on Sam Darnold, they probably just go with JJ McCarthy and just feel fine with that. But I would imagine that they would probably, if they lose out on Sam Darnold, they probably go with another one. And then there's the awkward conversation in Minnesota about, do you actually want to keep Sam Darnold because you used a lot of draft capital on JJ McCarthy? Or is there a trade possibility with one of these teams that is very obviously quarterback needy? The other ones that are on the fence, I have the Colts. They have $48 million in salary cap space going into next year. It would cost them $20 million to cut Anthony Richardson, which at this point, the way teams have been cutting quarterbacks, that's pennies for them. You can make that up in a couple of restructured contracts. And so if the Colts are seeing what we are seeing, in that Anthony Richardson just kind of isn't it, then they kind of enter the fray. And same thing with New Orleans. Now, they're in a bit of a different situation because for the 8th year in a row, their salary cap situation is abysmal. And there are ways you can get around all of it. But they right now projected to have negative $78 million in salary cap space, which makes it tough to find your quarterback of the future. And then again, this team has won too many games. Now, if teams were smart and didn't reach on Quinn Ewers or Jalen Milroe, then maybe you get them, even you're reaching a little bit in the middle part of the first round, but maybe you get a bit of a steal there and can try to fix some things that way. But again, we're talking about a Saints team that has quite a few holes across the board, even after all the injured players start to come back out there in New Orleans. And it would cost them, $50 million to cut Derek Carr. So that's where I think this conversation gets interesting, because on the one hand, we have established we don't think Anthony Richardson is it. Now, he needs more time, but if I'm the Colts, I don't know if I want to give him more time anymore. That being said, we've already talked about how there aren't a whole lot of options out there at the quarterback position, and there's just not a whole lot there that is going to come in and save you. Same with the Saints. Maybe you take a shot on a 1-year thing with Jacoby Brissett, or you just kind of eat it with Derek Carr. We're not going to be good anyway. There isn't a whole lot of options out there. Let's just keep rolling with it. Now, that's a real sell to an owner. Like, hey, just by the way, we're not going to make this change at the most important position, probably in sports, because we don't think we're very good. And so why would we spend extra money to still be not good? The GM, the owner could then very reasonably say, oh, okay, excellent logic. You're fired for putting us in this situation, and have a great day. So again, you feel like you have a couple of teams that could be looking to make some moves and enter this quarterback battle. But because, again, there just isn't a whole lot there, I don't know. They might just kind of stick it out with their guy for one more year and just kind of see. And then you have the teams that are all set at quarterback, just to rattle them off here. Arizona, Kyler's fine. It's not perfect, but it's not bad. Atlanta, they're set. Whether it's with Kirk Cousins next year, and I have him, he's the only one in the too much to cut category because it is $65 million in dead cap if they cut him next year. So that's too much to take on for what is a talented roster. But yeah, so it is Arizona, Atlanta, Baltimore, Buffalo, Carolina, Chicago, Cincinnati, Dallas. They just signed Dak to an extension. Denver, obviously, Detroit, Green Bay, Houston. I have Jacksonville on here. They just signed Trevor Lawrence to an extension. And again, there's nothing out there that comes close to what Trevor Lawrence could be if you get that figured out. Chiefs, Avi. The Chargers, Rams I looked at for a second, but again, they're a team that just based on what's available right now, you probably don't need to sweat it with this right now because it doesn't seem like that option is going to be there in a real significant way. Miami, New England, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Seattle, Tampa Bay, and Washington. Those are the teams that are set right now. So I think it is going to be a real interesting kind of battle here in the offseason where you are going to have probably two kids drafted way too early in the NFL draft, in Sanders and Ward. And then you may even have a couple other kids drafted way too early right now in Ewers and in Jalen Milroe. And like, honestly, in Milroe's case, he may end up being the best quarterback of the bunch. But right now, 49th overall on the ESPN big board. And I think that there is a very good chance he goes like top 15 in the draft. So let's take a look now, finally, to kind of put a bow on this, to see where everyone could stack up and where the mistakes could be made. Let's assume, because I kind of am, let's assume that Minnesota is keeping Sam Darnold. They have $78 million in salary cap space, which is less than some of the other teams who have that cap space available. The one other interesting part of this, and sorry, I'm just kind of bouncing around with all of these things, but the other interesting part of this is the Raiders are the only team in the quarterback needy group that have also a top 5 amount of salary cap space available to them. So if they wanted to go out and just spend stupid money on Sam Darnold, they could do it. But then you have so many holes that you need to fill on both sides of the football that I just don't know if it is necessarily worth it for that team to do it. But then again, it's this back and forth. And it's why team building can be so frustrating when you have teams in the NFL just, fuck it, quarterback. Because again, the Raiders are not ready for a young quarterback to come in and lead the charge. And even if they wanted to try to do what New England is doing, where you draft Shedeur Sanders and then you bring in Jacoby Brissett and just let him be a sitting duck out there for a little bit, they're still kind of new in Vegas, and that wasn't a rowdy crowd last night for Monday Night Football. And when you have Shedeur and maybe Dion coming along with him, it is bright lights, big city, and there's billboards and all of that. That is a very, very difficult quarterback to have sitting on your bench. And then when you look at Deion Sanders and a lot of the talk that they might Eli Manning this thing, you just be like, we're not going to go there. I think assurances will have to be made that kid's going to have to start right away, and the Raiders are just not ready for that. Same thing. Like right now, the top 5 picks in the draft would be the actually, I'm going to pull this up. Not that I don't trust you, Score app, but ESPN does kind of explain the tiebreakers a little bit more, and so obviously these could change, but let's take a look at what the top picks in the NFL would be at this exact moment in time. All right, I do think they have it correct, so sorry, Score app. But the New York Giants would be drafting first. Quarterback needy team. It would be so hard for this team to just not go quarterback there. And then at 2, Raiders. Same thing. It would be so difficult for the Raiders to not go quarterback in that spot. And I have said here, I am a Raider fan. I have said that is the direction I want them to go, even though they aren't ready for it. It's been so bad, the quarterback play for so long with the Raiders, that you kind of just want a guy. And that's the trap people fall into, because I feel like I'm a bit more rational about this stuff than others are. And even I'm falling into the irrational trap that is that sort of a thing. And then after that, like you have Carolina, not quarterback needy. So now, if you do have two teams in the Raiders and the Giants that reach on quarterback, now Carolina basically gets the best player in the draft, whether it's a great pass rusher, another weapon that you can throw out there with Bryce Young, a very good offensive lineman, of which they have none of right now. That makes sense. And then New England, kind of same thing. They have the most salary cap space. So you can absolutely see a world where New England drafts a playmaker on the offensive side of the football and then also goes out and signs T. Higgins. And now look at this. You have a dynamic offense one more time in New England. Tennessee at 5 is where I think this gets very fascinating. Because if we assume the Raiders and Giants reach, and we're saying that Cam Ward from 15 to 2 is a reach, then Quinn Ewers from 34 to 5 is a go-go gadget arms stretch. That would be a almost franchise-altering mistake. Although, again, if it works out, because I think Ewers can be pretty good, or with a Jalen Milroe, could be pretty good, then all of a sudden you have found your guy. And that is what is so tantalizing about this whole thing. But I think this year in particular, a lot of mistakes are going to be made because there isn't that number one guy. And you have teams in high draft spots who are desperate for the number one. And then the added thing on top of it is you have someone who has the name value of a number one, bringing it all around. So that is the quarterback situation right now in the NFL.